The winter night wrapped the emergency room in a peculiar silence, broken only by the steady squeak of Daniel Carter's mop across the polished floor. To everyone rushing past, he was invisible, just another janitor in faded blue scrubs, melting into the background of the hospital's pristine corridors. 40 years old with weathered hands and watchful eyes, Daniel moved methodically between the examination rooms, collecting discarded gloves and wiping away the evidence of human suffering. When the ambulance doors burst open at 2:17 a.m. and a stretcher carrying a pale 12-year-old girl rushed through, nobody noticed how Daniel's rhythm faltered. Nobody saw how his eyes narrowed at the girl's blue-tinged lips, the swelling around her neck, the peculiar pattern of her breathing. And certainly nobody expected that this quiet janitor, not the board-certified physicians shouting orders, would be the first to recognize the deadly crisis unfolding before them all. Follow the journey of a seemingly ordinary single father whose hidden knowledge will shock an entire medical system and forever change the life of a successful but isolated CEO who never thought she'd need to look twice at the man who cleans her hospital floor. Daniel Carter finished his third hallway of the night, wringing the mop with practiced efficiency. 9 hours into his shift, his lower back ached in a familiar way, but his movements remained precise. At 40, his body still maintained the disciplined posture from his military days, though few at Metropolitan Memorial Hospital would ever guess his background. "Excuse me," a young nurse muttered without making eye contact, stepping over the freshly mopped floor and leaving muddy footprints in her wake. Daniel said nothing. He never did. The invisible man routine had become second nature in the 3 years since he'd taken this job, the only one he could find that offered night shifts compatible with single parenthood and didn't require the credentials he no longer possessed. "The bathroom on the surgical floor is overflowing again," called the night supervisor, tossing him a set of keys. "When you're done here." Daniel nodded, pocketing the keys. The supervisor was already walking away, not waiting for a response. Nobody did. To them, he existed solely as a function, the person who made messes disappear. At 5:30 a.m., Daniel would clock out, drive his worn Honda Civic to the small 2-bedroom apartment he shared with his daughter Mia, prepare her lunch, wake her gently at 6:15, and help her get ready for school. 9-year-old Mia with her curious eyes and endless questions, the one person who still looked at him like he was somebody. 16 floors above where Daniel worked, Dr. Olivia Morgan stood at the window of her executive office, reviewing quarterly budget reports despite the late hour. At 38, she had become the youngest CEO in the hospital's history, a position she'd earned through brilliance, tenacity, and an unflinching ability to make difficult decisions. The wall behind her desk displayed her medical degrees from Stanford and Hopkins, alongside photographs of her receiving various healthcare leadership awards. Only one personal photo adorned the space, a framed picture of her daughter Lily, a serious-faced 12-year-old, with her mother's analytical eyes. "Dr. Morgan, the board presentation is updated with the new efficiency metrics," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Email it to me, I'll review before morning," Olivia replied, her voice crisp with authority. The staff respected Dr. Morgan. Her surgical record was impeccable, her administrative decisions consistently sound. But the whispers in break rooms spoke of her coldness, how she ran the hospital like a well-oiled machine rather than a place of healing. Few knew of her nightly ritual, calling her daughter's night nurse for a detailed report, then working until the small hours to compensate for leaving precisely at 5 p.m. each day to have dinner with Lily. Fewer still knew about Lily's health struggles, the mysterious symptoms that had started 3 years ago, sending Olivia on an endless quest for answers across specialist after specialist. The irony wasn't lost on her. The doctor who could heal others, but couldn't solve the mystery afflicting her own child. Daniel had seen Dr. Morgan exactly 7 times during his employment. Each time, she had walked past him without a glance, surrounded by an entourage of administrators or physicians. He noticed how others straightened in her presence, how conversations shifted to more professional tones. Once, he had been mopping near the conference room when she emerged from a heated budget meeting. For just a moment, their eyes had met, hers flickering with momentary confusion as if trying to place him, before she'd received an urgent call and strode away. already immersed in the next crisis. Two different worlds orbiting in the same building, never meant to collide. Until tonight. The ambulance bay doors slid open with a mechanical hiss, admitting a blast of frigid air and controlled chaos. Daniel pressed his mop against the wall, stepping aside as a stretcher surrounded by paramedics rushed past. Female, 12 years old, presenting with facial swelling, tachycardia, and altered mental status, announced the lead paramedic. BP dropping to 90/50, temperature 99.1. Daniel's attention sharpened. The girl on the stretcher had pale, blue-tinged lips, her face swollen in a distinctive pattern that triggered something in his memory, something from another life, another role. Mom says she was fine at dinner, then complained of dizziness and stomach pain before collapsing, the paramedic continued. Walking behind the medical team, a woman in a camel coat with disheveled hair clutched her phone with white knuckles. It took Daniel a moment to recognize Dr. Morgan without her usual composed expression. Terror had transformed her face completely. "Get Dr. Patel and Dr. Williams," she commanded, her voice struggling for clinical detachment. "And page endocrinology." Inside Trauma Room 1, monitors were quickly attached as a team of nurses and residents surrounded the girl. "Starting IV access now," called a nurse. "History of allergies?" asked the attending physician who had rushed in. "None documented," answered another voice, "but presentation looks like anaphylaxis." Daniel continued mopping, edging closer to the room's open doorway. Something about the girl's symptoms didn't align with the anaphylaxis diagnosis. The pattern of swelling, the specific pallor, it reminded him of something he'd seen in Afghanistan during his final deployment. "Let's get 0.3 milligrams of epinephrine ready," ordered the attending, "and start her on steroids and antihistamines." Daniel's hand tightened around the mop handle. He'd been a combat medic before everything fell apart. Before the explosion that injured his leg, before coming home to find his wife's cancer had progressed beyond treatment, before the cascade of medical bills that stripped him of everything, including his certification. 5 years felt like a lifetime ago, but some knowledge remained embedded in his instincts. This wasn't anaphylaxis. The symptoms matched something far less common. He watched as they prepared to administer epinephrine, knowing it might worsen her condition if his suspicion was correct. A memory flashed. Lieutenant Rodriguez, collapsing during a training exercise, showing the same constellation of symptoms. They'd nearly lost him until the battalion physician recognized adrenal crisis. Daniel set his mop aside and approached the doorway, hovering at the threshold of a world he no longer belonged to. "Excuse me," he said, his voice rusty from disuse. No one turned. "Excuse me," he repeated louder this time. A young resident glanced over, irritation flashing across her face. "We need this area cleaned later. We're in the middle of an emergency." "I think," Daniel began. "Please step back," the resident cut him off, already turning away. Dr. Morgan stood at the foot of her daughter's bed, watching with increasing panic as the girl's vital signs continued to deteriorate despite the initial treatments. "Something's not right," she said. "This isn't presenting like a typical allergic reaction." "We're covering all bases, Dr. Morgan," the attending physician assured her, professional courtesy barely masking his discomfort at having the CEO witnessing his work. "Let's get that epinephrine in now." Daniel's jaw tightened. Making a decision, he grabbed a prescription pad from the nurse's station and quickly wrote, "Consider adrenal crisis/Addisonian crisis. Check for hyperpigmentation on gums, elbows, knees. Epinephrine contraindicated. Need hydrocortisone IV stat." He folded the note and approached a young medical student standing at the periphery of the action. "Make sure someone reads this," he said quietly, pressing the paper into the startled student's hand before returning to his mop and cart. The student unfolded the note, frowning in confusion as she read it. Inside the trauma room, the monitor alarms blared as Lily's blood pressure dropped further following the epinephrine administration. "She's crashing," someone called out. "This doesn't make sense. The epi should be helping if it's anaphylaxis." The medical student hesitantly raised her hand, still holding Daniel's note. Dr. Williams? I was given this note. It suggests something else might be happening." "What do you mean, given this note?" Dr. Williams snapped, taking the folded paper. His eyes scanned the hastily written message, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. Who wrote this? The medical student pointed toward the hallway. The janitor. A beat of incredulous silence followed. Check her gums and joints for hyperpigmentation, Dr. Williams ordered, already moving to examine Lily more closely. Dr. Morgan pushed forward. What is it? What does the note say? It suggests adrenal crisis, Dr. Williams replied, pulling back Lily's lips to reveal darkened gum lines. And she does have the hyperpigmentation consistent with Addison's disease. That's impossible, another doctor interjected. Addison's is incredibly rare. But an undiagnosed case would explain her previous symptoms, Dr. Morgan interrupted, medical knowledge temporarily overriding maternal panic. The fatigue, the salt cravings, the unexplained weight loss. Her pressure's still dropping, called a nurse urgently. We need hydrocortisone, 100 milligrams IV push, Dr. Williams ordered, and someone get that janitor in here. Outside, Daniel had continued his rounds, moving methodically through his cleaning routine while anxiety churned in his stomach. He'd overstepped, probably risked his job, but couldn't have lived with himself if he'd said nothing. A breathless resident appeared at the end of the hallway. You, janitor, they need you in Trauma 1, now. Daniel set down his mop and followed, feeling the curious stares of nurses and orderlies as he passed. Inside the trauma room, all eyes turned to him as he entered. Dr. Williams held up the note. Did you write this? Daniel nodded once, standing straighter despite his fatigue. Yes. How did you know to suspect adrenal crisis? Dr. Williams demanded. Are you medical personnel? I was, Daniel replied quietly. Combat medic, 68th Whiskey, with the 10th Mountain Division. We had a similar case during deployment. Soldier collapsed during patrol, with identical presentation. Dr. Morgan stepped forward, her normally composed face etched with desperation and confusion. You're certain about this diagnosis? No, ma'am, I can't be certain without labs, Daniel answered, falling unconsciously into military formality. But the presentation is textbook Addisonian crisis, the hypotension worsening after epinephrine, the characteristic swelling pattern, hyperpigmentation. Has she been experiencing fatigue, salt cravings, or GI upset recently? Dr. Morgan stared at him, speechless at hearing her daughter's ongoing symptoms so accurately described by the hospital janitor. She needs hydrocortisone immediately, Daniel continued, addressing Dr. Williams, and saline for volume replacement. If it is adrenal crisis, her cortisol production has crashed, and her body can't handle stress responses. The room erupted into action. A nurse confirmed the IV hydrocortisone was flowing, another adjusted saline rates. We need labs, cortisol levels, ACTH, electrolytes, Dr. Williams ordered, professionalism overcoming his initial skepticism. Within 15 minutes, Lily's vital signs began to stabilize. Color returned to her cheeks as the hydrocortisone counteracted the crisis. Dr. Morgan hadn't moved from her daughter's side, but her eyes repeatedly drifted to Daniel, who stood awkwardly by the door, clearly unsure whether to stay or return to his duties. What's your name? She finally asked. Daniel Carter, ma'am. How long have you worked here, Mr. Carter? 3 years, Dr. Morgan. Recognition flickered in her eyes, not of him specifically, but the realization that he'd been present in her hospital all this time, invisible until this moment. You just saved my daughter's life, she said, her voice catching. For the first time in years, the formidable Dr. Morgan's eyes filled with tears. Daniel shifted uncomfortably under the stares of the medical team. Anyone with the training would have recognized it. But they didn't, she replied, glancing pointedly at the assembled physicians. You did. By morning, the hospital buzzed with the story. The janitor, who had diagnosed what a room full of doctors had missed. The CEO's daughter, saved by the most unlikely hero. Daniel arrived for his next shift to find people looking at him differently. Some with newfound respect, others with skepticism, a few with embarrassment. The attending physicians from that night had written a detailed report praising the quick intervention of staff member Daniel Carter, though noticeably omitting his job title. 3 days later, Daniel was mopping the radiology hallway, when Dr. Morgan approached him directly, without entourage or pretense. "Mr. Carter, could I speak with you privately?" He followed her to a small consultation room, acutely aware of his cleaning uniform, his worn shoes, the disparity between them. "Lily is recovering well," she began. "The endocrinology team confirmed Addison's disease. They've started her on replacement therapy." She paused, studying him with new eyes. "They said without your intervention, she likely wouldn't have survived that crisis." Daniel nodded, unsure how to respond to her gratitude. "I'm glad I could help. I've been looking into your background," she continued, her tone shifting to something more professional. "Your military record is impressive. Distinguished service, advanced medical training, multiple commendations for battlefield care." He tensed. That was another life. "You were more than a combat medic. You had nearly completed physician assistant training before your discharge." She consulted a tablet. "What happened, Mr. Carter? Why are you mopping floors instead of practicing medicine?" The question hung between them, deceptively simple, yet impossibly complex. "Life happened," he finally answered. "My wife got sick while I was deployed. By the time I came home, the cancer was everywhere, medical bills piled up. After she died, I couldn't focus on recertification exams. Then our house went into foreclosure, and I needed steady work that allowed me to be there for my daughter." He met her gaze directly. "This job lets me work nights while she sleeps and be with her during the day. The benefits cover her health care." "It's enough." Olivia absorbed his words, recognition flickering in her eyes. Not of privilege, but of the shared burden of single parenthood. "I'd like to offer you a position," she said. "Special advisor for emergency response training. We clearly have gaps in our diagnostic protocols, and your experience could be invaluable." Daniel shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, Dr. Morgan, but I don't have active credentials. This wouldn't be a clinical role, it would be educational, training our first responders to recognize what you saw." She leaned forward, "and it would come with significantly better compensation and daytime hours. I can't accept special treatment because I happen to be in the right place at the right time." Frustration flashed across her face, the expression of someone unaccustomed to hearing no. "This isn't charity, Mr. Carter. It's recognition of expertise we clearly need." She stood abruptly. "Think about it. My door's open when you're ready to discuss it further." 2 days later, having received no response from Daniel, Olivia took an unprecedented step. Using the personnel file, she drove to the modest apartment complex where he lived. The building was clean but dated, with children's bicycles chained to railings and faded curtains in windows. She hesitated before knocking on apartment 3B, feeling strangely nervous, an emotion foreign to the confident CEO. Daniel opened the door, surprise evident on his face as he recognized her. He wore jeans and a faded gray t-shirt instead of hospital scrubs, looking both younger and more substantial outside the institutional setting. "Dr. Morgan, I apologize for the intrusion," she began, suddenly aware of the impropriety of her visit. "I hoped we could continue our conversation." A small voice called from inside. "Dad? Who is it?" Daniel glanced over his shoulder. "A colleague, Mia. Keep working on your science project." He stepped into the hallway, partially closing the door behind him. "This isn't a good time." "I understand, but..." Olivia stopped as the apartment door swung wider, revealing a small girl with curious eyes and her father's reserved expression. "Are you from Dad's work?" Mia asked directly. Olivia nodded, momentarily disarmed by the child's forthright manner. "Yes, I am. Dad says he just cleans up, but he knows lots about medicine," Mia stated proudly. "He helps me with my science homework and knows all the bones and muscles." Daniel placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Mia, Dr. Morgan is very busy." "It's actually dinner time," Olivia found herself saying. "Perhaps I could take both of you out? To thank you properly for what you did for my daughter?" The invitation surprised them all, most of all Olivia herself. Later, seated in a family restaurant with plastic menus and paper placemats, Olivia watched Daniel help Mia color her children's menu while they waited for their food. The tenderness in his interactions with his daughter revealed dimensions entirely absent in his hospital persona. "How is Lily feeling?" he asked, looking up and catching her observation. "Better every day," The endocrinologists are adjusting her medication. Olivia smiled faintly. She's asked about you, the man who knew what was wrong when nobody else did. She seems like a remarkable girl. She is, though I'm afraid I haven't given her the childhood she deserves. The admission slipped out unexpectedly. Between the hospital demands and her health concerns, there's been precious little normalcy. Daniel nodded, understanding in his eyes. Kids are resilient. They don't need perfect, just present. Is that why you turned down my offer, to stay present for Mia? He considered the question seriously. Partly, but also because I'm not the man I was before. The skills might remain, but something broke in me after losing Sarah, my wife, after failing to save her despite everything I knew. He glanced at Mia, ensuring she was absorbed in her coloring. I couldn't face going back into medicine and failing someone else. But you didn't fail Lily, Olivia said softly. You saved her when everyone else missed it. A moment doesn't erase years of doubt. No, she agreed, surprising him with her understanding. But sometimes one moment is all it takes to begin rebuilding. As their conversation deepened over simple hamburgers and fries, Daniel gradually revealed the story he'd told no one at the hospital. How he'd returned from deployment to find his wife's cancer had metastasized. How they'd exhausted their savings on experimental treatments. How he'd held her hand during her final breath, while 8-year-old Mia slept in the chair beside them. Olivia in turn spoke of her daughter's mysterious symptoms that had baffled specialists for years. The nights spent researching obscure conditions, and the irony of being a physician unable to diagnose her own child. I've built my career on being in control, she admitted. Running the hospital gave me the illusion I could control everything, including Lily's health. Your diagnosis shattered that illusion completely. Sometimes letting go of control is the first step toward healing, Daniel said quietly. She met his gaze across the table, seeing for the first time not the janitor, not even the former combat medic, but simply a man who understood the weight she carried. 2 weeks after their impromptu dinner, Olivia invited Daniel to her office again. This time he accepted. I've revised my proposal, she said, sliding a folder across her desk. Part-time consultant for our emergency training program. Flexible hours that won't conflict with Mia's schedule. Daniel reviewed the document carefully. This is generous. It's appropriate for your expertise, she corrected. And there's something else. She handed him a second folder. The hospital's educational assistance program. If you're interested in recertifying or pursuing further medical education, we'll cover it. He looked up, startled by the offer. Why are you doing this? Because talent shouldn't be mopping floors, she replied simply. Then, with uncharacteristic hesitation, and because I'd like to get to know the real Daniel Carter better. Something shifted between them in that moment, the acknowledgement of a connection neither had anticipated. Over the following months, their professional collaboration evolved alongside a deepening personal relationship. Daniel began developing training modules for emergency staff, his practical battlefield experience bringing vital perspective to the hospital's protocols. Olivia found herself lingering after meetings, their conversations extending beyond hospital matters. Their daughters met at a hospital fundraiser, Lily, still recovering but gaining strength daily, and Mia, initially shy but quickly warming to the older girl who shared her interest in science. The four of them began spending weekend afternoons together, at museums, parks, or simply at Daniel's apartment, where he taught both girls basic first aid techniques, turning medical education into games. Olivia observed these lessons from the sidelines, struck by Daniel's natural teaching ability and the patience he showed with both children. You're wasted as a consultant, she told him one evening as they watched the girls examining leaf specimens under a microscope Daniel had salvaged and repaired. You should be leading our education department. He smiled, the expression coming more easily now. One step at a time. I'm still getting used to wearing a badge with my name instead of custodial services. I've been thinking about something you said that first night at the restaurant, Olivia said, her voice softening. About being present rather than perfect. I've spent so much energy trying to be the perfect doctor, the perfect administrator, the perfect mother, and missing the moments that matter. It's never too late to change course, Daniel replied, glancing meaningly at the girls giggling together. Later that evening, after Mia had fallen asleep during their movie night, Olivia and Daniel sat on his small balcony, sharing coffee and comfortable silence. I used to be terrified of failure, she admitted, watching the city lights below. Every decision at the hospital, every parenting choice, I approached them all as problems that needed perfect solutions. And now I'm learning that some of the best moments come from letting go of that need for control. She turned to him. You taught me that, Daniel. You and your mop and your quiet wisdom. He laughed softly. Not exactly how I imagined making an impact on the world. Isn't that how it always happens? The most significant changes come from unexpected sources. She hesitated, then reached for his hand. Thank you for saving Lily, and for showing me there's more to healing than medicine. Daniel's fingers interlaced with hers, a simple gesture that bridged the worlds they'd once inhabited separately. Thank you for seeing me when I'd become used to being invisible. Their first kiss came naturally, under the canopy of stars, tentative at first, then deepening, with the recognition of two people who had each carried too much alone for too long. As spring turned to summer, Daniel enrolled in courses to reinstate his medical credentials, studying late into the night after Mia had gone to bed. Olivia found herself delegating more administrative tasks to make time for her family, both her daughter and the two people who had unexpectedly become essential to their lives. The hospital staff watched the transformation of their formidable CEO with fascination. The Ice Queen was thawing, some whispered. Others noted how she now stopped to speak with environmental services staff, learning names and stories of those who had previously been background fixtures in her domain. Daniel, too, underwent a metamorphosis, standing taller, speaking with the quiet authority that had always been present but subdued. When he offered suggestions in training sessions, physicians who might once have dismissed a janitor's input now listened attentively to the combat-experienced medic. I never thought I'd practice medicine again, he confessed to Olivia one evening as they reviewed his course materials together. After Sarah died, it felt like everything I knew was useless. What changed? She asked. He considered the question carefully. Lily's case reminded me that knowledge isn't meant to be buried. And you? You reminded me that second chances exist, even when we don't feel worthy of them. We heal each other, Olivia said simply, resting her head against his shoulder. 1 year after the night that had altered their trajectories, Metropolitan Memorial Hospital hosted its annual healthcare symposium. The grand ballroom buzzed with medical professionals from across the country, name badges denoting prestigious institutions and impressive credentials. On stage, Dr. Olivia Morgan approached the podium to deliver the keynote address, her usual professional attire softened by less severe styling and the relaxed confidence of someone who had found a more balanced center. Medicine is a science of knowledge and an art of observation, she began, scanning the audience. Too often we confuse credentials with competence, titles with talent. Tonight, I want to tell you about a lesson in humility that transformed not only our hospital protocols, but my understanding of what it means to be a healer. She recounted the night of Lily's crisis, not sparing herself or her staff in describing how they had nearly missed the diagnosis that would have cost her daughter's life. The person who recognized what we all missed wasn't wearing a white coat or carrying an impressive title. He was quietly cleaning the floors, watching with eyes trained by battlefield medicine and a mind that never stopped learning, even when circumstances forced him from his chosen path. Daniel sat in the audience beside Lily and Mia, both girls beaming with pride as Olivia continued. I'm pleased to announce that Metropolitan Memorial is launching the Carter Protocol, a revolutionary training program that breaks down hierarchical barriers in emergency diagnosis. This initiative encourages every hospital staff member, regardless of role, to flag potential diagnostic concerns through a simple, anonymous system. Applause rippled through the audience. And the architect of this program, Olivia continued, the man whose observation saved my daughter and will now help save countless others, is no longer invisible within our halls. Please welcome to the stage our new Director of Interdisciplinary Emergency Training, Daniel Carter. The applause swelled as Daniel made his way to the podium, the transformation complete from the shadow who had once mopped these same floors. He embraced Olivia briefly before turning to address the audience. "Thank you, Dr. Morgan." His voice was steady, confident. "Many of you know me as the janitor who got lucky one night. Others now know me as a program director or consultant, but my most important identity has always been that of a caregiver, whether to wounded soldiers, my daughter, or patients who never knew my name." He outlined the Carter Protocol with clarity and conviction, explaining how traditional hospital hierarchies often silence the very observations that could save lives. Healing isn't exclusive to those with the right degrees hanging on their walls. It belongs to anyone with the knowledge, courage, and compassion to act when someone is suffering. Sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from the person everyone overlooks. After the presentation, as attendees networked over cocktails, Daniel found himself surrounded by physicians and administrators eager to implement his protocol in their own institutions. Across the room, Olivia watched with undisguised pride, fielding her own congratulations from colleagues who noted both the program's innovation and her personal transformation. "Dad?" Mia tugged at his sleeve, breaking through the professional conversation. "Lily says we're going to be late for the surprise." Daniel checked his watch. "You're right. Please excuse us," he said to the gathered doctors. Family commitment. The surprise was a twilight picnic in the botanical gardens. Lily and Mia's joint planning effort to celebrate both the symposium success and the one-year anniversary of their family's collision. As they spread blankets on the grass beneath flowering trees, Olivia marveled at how natural it felt. This unconventional family they had created from shared trauma and healing. "A penny for your thoughts, Dr. Morgan," Daniel said softly, sitting beside her while the girls arranged the picnic supplies with exaggerated seriousness. "I was just thinking about parallel universes," she replied. "In some other reality, you might still be mopping floors while I worked myself into isolation in my office. Lily's condition might have gone undiagnosed until it was too late." "Tearful thoughts for a celebration?" he teased gently. "Actually, they are." She turned to face him fully. "Because they make me incredibly grateful for this reality, the one where you were brave enough to speak up, where I was humbled enough to listen, and where two broken healers found a way to become whole again." Daniel's hand found hers, their fingers interlacing with familiar comfort. "Not just healers," he corrected. "A family." As sunset painted the sky in amber and rose, the four figures on the blanket formed a tableau of unexpected joy. Two children who had found sisters in each other, and two adults who had discovered that sometimes life's most profound healing begins only after we've been completely broken open. When Daniel kissed Olivia beneath the blossoming trees, neither thought about the status gulf that had once separated them. The janitor and the CEO had disappeared, leaving only Daniel and Olivia. Two people who had learned that true healing is never about power or position, but about having the courage to see beyond appearances, to the heart of what matters most. The hospital corridors would still be mopped each night, emergencies would still arrive at unpredictable hours, but something fundamental had shifted within the institution's culture. In break rooms and nurses' stations, a new mantra had taken hold. Remember the janitor, listen to every voice. Because everyone now knew that sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected sources, and the most profound healers are often those we never thought to see at all. Never underestimate someone based solely on their position. True dedication and knowledge don't require credentials to be recognized, just the right moment to shine. A person who has fallen can still become someone else's strength. And love between two souls who have experienced loss becomes a journey of mutual healing, not rescue.